working there who I'd never seen before. And she immediately got, my attention. and Uncle Dean introduced us, and then he walked away, and I kind of hemmed and hawed and stammered, and I asked her for a date to go water skiing down on Lake Roosevelt, which was 40 miles south of Republic, and I had a 17-foot inboard boat there and water skis. She had never water skied, but she's a very adventuresome person, and she immediately said she'd like to do that. So we made a date for Sunday afternoon, and I was supposed to pick her up at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I come to her house and knock on the front door. She comes to the door, and the minute she opened the door, I smelled this unusual odor. It was kind of a greasy odor. And I thought, what in the world is this? And she says, well, come back in the kitchen and meet my brother and my sister and my mother. So we go back there, and here her 12-year-old brother would recently joined the Boy Scouts, and he'd always heard that if you were lost in the woods, you could always take a stick and kill a porcupine and eat it, keep from starving to death. Well, he went and killed a porcupine, and here he was baking the porcupine. And that's what the smell was. Oh my God. Well, anyway, we then went down to water ski, and Ruth had never water skied, and I explained what to do and everything, and so she kept trying it. We didn't, with two skis, why, it's usually easiest to either start off of a dock or a deep water start where you're leaning backwards with your skis up in front of you. But anyway, we tried and tried and tried. And as Ruth describes it, she says, finally, when the sun was setting in the west, she got up. But anyway, the upshot of this whole thing was that this water ski rope that I had, why, was just a piece of 3/8 inch rope, but I'd made a handle out of an old axe handle, to hold on to. It was about probably 15 inches long or such a matter, but here was Ruth laying kind of backwards in the water with her knees up and trying to get up, and that rope and the handle on the end of it went right between her legs and really bruised her, the inside of her thighs. And so we go home, and I leave her at home, and the next day she was so stiff she hardly could walk from all of this unusual exercise. And then of course here are these big bruises on the inside of her thighs, and her dad saw it. He said, what in the world did that man do to you? Of course, being a logger, loggers in that area were a pretty rough bunch. So I kind of got off to a bad start. It kind of pointed out, I just couldn't believe how Ruth persevered, and she just would not give up until she succeeded in water skiing. In fact, it was really more than being perseverance. I think it was kind of bordering stubbornness. Ruth has been very adventurous in all of our married life. All I had to do was suggest we go do something, and she usually would say, well, let's go. And we've done some very adventuresome things, really, and enjoyed them. And I didn't always suggest things myself. Like one time she said, we'd been talking of going to Alaska. She said, you know what I'd like to do is to follow in the footsteps of my grandfather, who was in gold rush there in 1898. And he had came to Skagway, and he'd actually gone up over White Pass to get to the interior, but we didn't know that until 2 weeks before we left to go up there. But anyway, we were all set up, and we backpacked across Chilkoot Pass, and then walked the old railroad grade back out to the highway where we had a ride arranged for. Then we went down to Whitehorse, we rented a canoe, and the canoe people hauled us back up to, what was it, Johnson's Crossing. And we took off there down the Teslin River. We went down the Teslin River for 120 miles to where we hit the Yukon, and then we went down the Yukon another 120 miles and took out, I forget the name of the town. Carmax, yeah. But that was Ruth's suggestion. It wasn't mine that we do this, but it was a wonderful trip. I'd just love to do it again if I could. But it kind of shows you the type of person Ruth is. Now I'd like to talk about some of her other qualities. Ruth has never been a very emotional woman. Some women get all excited about things, and Ruth is usually quite calm, and she's very level-headed, particularly in an emergency. And she's a very loving person, and she's been a wonderful wife, a wonderful mother, and a wonderful grandmother. And I once heard that there's 3 important times in a person's life, and the 3 times is when you're born, and when you get married, and when you die. And the only one that you have any control over at all is when you get married. So it's really important that you pick the right person. Well, as far as I'm concerned, I picked the right person.